You can always send us your comments or suggestions or tutorials to techcorner@datavideo.com. And today, as always, we're actually simultaneously streaming to Facebook and to YouTube. So we'd be happy to answer any of your questions that you might have to the live feed. If you'd like our content, we really appreciate it if you could give us a like on Facebook, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And today's topic for the Datavideo Tech Corner is the HDR-1 Recorder. This is one of our most popular recorders in our product line. It records H.264 to regular, well, I shouldn't say regular USB media, but USB media.
And, we'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that momentarily. And the reason that this recorder is so popular is because it records to an MP4 file format, which is really nice because it's great for cross-platform uses. You can, open the files on a PC, on a Mac. There are numerous players out there that can open the file codec, so it's perfect for those type of applications. What I wanted to kind of do was give you a little tour of the front panel today. So we can get a close-up shot here, which is great. So we've got our power button, obviously, our transport controls, play, stop, rewind, record. We've got our menu buttons here. We've got some function buttons. We've got a little indicator there that's actually a little LED indicator that will give you some feedback, and we'll get into that in a moment. We've got our USB port, which is actually a USB 2.0 port on the unit. And one thing that we get asked often via tech support is whether the lights are not functioning in the front. And actually, we wanted to point out that there is no indicator lights on the actual buttons. That is actual normal operation. The only indicator light is that little status light that I pointed out earlier. So don't be alarmed if you power it on and you don't see, active lights on the front panel. That's normal. And with this particular recorder, we do give you a cool little media stick. So you basically got a Datavideo branded USB media stick with its own little tether or keychain that you can use, which is nice.
You'll never lose it.
Yeah, I doubt it. But maybe you can use it to mark your name on it, so maybe you can at least accuse the person that took it from you to give it back. So this is our nice little USB stick here. And now we'll go ahead and give you a little tour of the back panel, which is basically the ins and outs over here. So we've got our input for HDMI. Our output is also via HDMI. We've got our serial port. We've got GPI, which GPI is basically a general purpose interface. It does enables the ability to play pause or record pause on the recorder. Then over here you've got another USB input for a power bank, which actually, let me explain that now. So basically if you have one of these or something similar, which is basically just a little portable battery pack, the recorder can utilize one of those as basically for battery backup. So the nice thing about that is if you ever have a power loss during a live recording, it's enough power to keep the recorder up and running so that you can close your file system out, which is a nice additional protection. And let me give them a little point out. Yeah, exactly. The little 12-volt locking connector that we have back here. And that's with the actual power supply that we include with the recorder, which is nice, so that way if someone comes along and they accidentally kick the cord, it won't actually pull out of the back of the unit, which is nice. And one last thing that I wanted to point out was actually when I mentioned GPI, we've got a little, I know it's kind of a sloppy little thing here, but I'll show it to you. It's basically a little button switch, okay, and then you've got a little USB, I'm sorry, not USB, a little mini jack connector on there. And all that does is it allows you to push the button and record pause or play pause. But I mean, this is something that we made up, but it's something that anybody could make. And also a lot of times for our integrators that might want to add some type of that functionality to the recorder, they can utilize that GPI port for those same type of functionality. So with that being said, let me see if there was anything else that I should go over. Basically just the indicator light was, basically flashing red normally when it's recording. There are some other indications as well with the recorder as far as the indicator light, which are covered in the manual. It's kind of a little bit too lengthy to go over now, but I just wanted to point that out so you're aware of it. And with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Justin, and Justin's going to give you a really nice tour of the interface.
All right, time for a field trip through the menu. So we have two options at the beginning of the menu. We got Media Studio and Settings. We're going to start with the settings first. So up here, the first submenu option of interest is the display mode. So we have two modes of operation for the HDMI output. We have real-time mode, which is a zero lag display, and it's currently set to standard mode with full OSD and functions. Typically, you're going to want it in standard mode. That way you have a little OSD indicator when it is recording that pops up for a few seconds and then goes away, as well as some information when you stop the recording. But with real-time mode, it's intended for applications where you need the HDMI output to be outputting to, say, a video encoder for streaming, and you don't want any OSD information on that feed. And there's another feature related to that we'll get into in a moment while we pass date and time, which is always good to have up to date. Ours is 2 minutes behind.
Oh, shame on us. We're bad techs for having late time on there.
We'll jump into disk management in a moment because that requires walking you through how to format. AV management, we got AV pass-through, which is the other setting I was referring to a moment ago, where this allows you, when the device is powered off, to still output via HDMI. You would notice that the activity LED on the front of the HDR-1 that Steven mentioned earlier would be an amber color while it's in standby mode. So it's not functioning, but it's still receiving power and can pass video through to, say, your encoder. Color range is related to the RGB range of the video signal, whether you need full or limited. And we're going to go over the recording quality under here. You have 3 quality settings depending on the source video in our manual, and frequently asked questions on the support site. You can get a detailed chart of the bitrate breakdown, whether you have 1080p, 1080i, 720p, or you can even do standard definition over HDMI. So you could do a 480 as well, and it will have bitrate set up for that source. So we want the best, so we have optimal here. You can also set snapshot quality. You can take stills with this device, and you can set the quality for that. You can auto save any settings you have, so when you restart the device you don't lose them. And HDCP mode. If you're not familiar with HDCP, it's a copy protection format that is used with HDMI. And what can happen sometimes is, say you have a media player, which we do, and that content on the media player, even though we shot it and we own that content, the media player may mistake it by outputting a copy protected signal by default. So what we had to do in this case was we had to change it from default to by device signal, and that resolved our compatibility issue with the content from the media player. And you can set a timer, you can add a text-based watermark, and you can also, as exciting as it is, upgrade the firmware.
Yay, firmware.
We, of course, at Tech Corner always have the latest firmware, or at least try our best. And you can see that that is the latest firmware for this device. If you don't have it, if you have an earlier version like U02 or W02, those last 3 letters and numbers, just contact support at datavideo.com. We will send you a list with the latest firmware instructions and some helpful links from our support site.
Or they can actually get it right from the website page as well.
Oh yeah,
under the downloads link.
Every product page, you can go to the downloads tab and get the firmware as well for your device. And if you go crazy with the settings and you want to go back to the default, you can reset the device, as well as look at some exciting product information.
Ooh, product information.
So I want to go up to disk management, and we're gonna do a format. So you can see, you go into disk management, you go to disk information, And here you select the partition. Typically your USB thumb drive is only going to have a single partition anyway. And here you see it says how much space you used up, and below in that lower third it says F1 format. So you got F1, F2, and F3 right where Steven's finger is. I'm going to press F1 as it wants to make sure that I'm serious about this decision. I am.
Big decision. Very,
It is.
very big decision.
This is the biggest decision we've ever had to make on Tech Corner. Format. So while it's formatting, we're going to kind of go over the workflow of why you would format. And one thing to consider if you purchase additional discs for recording, chances are when you open the package and put into the HDR-1, it might not recognize it at all. And it's not a compatibility issue, it's a file system issue. Most USB sticks at this point ship formatted as exFAT. And the HDR-1 uses NTFS, which is the new technology file system. And exFAT's a newer technology. It pretty much is very similar to NTFS in terms of file size limits, which is virtually none. And to get it to NTFS, we have a formatting guide on our support site.
Which I can show them if we'd like to.
Yeah.
If I can find it, hopefully. So
it'll be a tour within a tour.
So basically, here's our Datavideo website. One of the handy links here is if you click on support right under the YouTube link there, and it'll come up there. And we want to know how do we format our drive. So you can actually either use the little search field there, or you can contact the Singapore office if you'd really like to know. No, I'm just kidding. Don't contact the Singapore office. So let's go ahead and go to here, and this is the guide. And this will kind of give you an explanation of it. And we don't want to bore you with it right at this moment, but it is there for you to help you along when you need it. And with that being said, I'll hand it back to Justin now that I've interrupted you.
No, I wanted you to interrupt me. With that article too, there is a distinction between PC and Mac, because Macs by default will not format NTFS without third-party software. So in that case, you would select Microsoft FAT, which is File Allocation Table. You may have heard of FAT32 way back. It is being phased out for NTFS and exFAT. Now, you just follow that guide, format Microsoft FAT for Mac and NTFS for PC. And then when you put it into the HDR-1, you will then run it through the format and disk information like we just did, and it's ready for use. A good workflow is when you finish recording, you will go back to the main menu. So you see here our format was complete. You go back to the main menu, you press F1 to eject the disk, and then when it's safe to remove it, you put it into your computer, you transfer your recordings to it. I would always back up a second copy for redundancy. And then once you confirm that the file's transferred safely, put the stick back into the HDR-1, go through the format process again so you have an empty drive, and proceed to record. So that way you don't run out of space on your disk, because if you get down to 1 gigabyte, what can happen is that the device will stop recording to help prevent the recording from getting corrupted from running out of space. So here we're going to do a sample recording of this band, and you can see how the OSD behaves when I press the record button. You see in that standard OSD mode, you get a brief 5-second pop-up, and then it briefly loses sync as it then goes into record mode. So that's not a glitch or error. And as always, it's good practice in production to pre-roll your recording by at least 10 to 30 seconds so that you can make sure the recording is up and running. And then also at the end do a post-roll. And the nice thing about HDR-1 is that when you have a recording that's finished, you can go into the Media Studio and trim the head and tail off of it. So I'm going to stop this recording, and it's going to finalize it. you'll see a menu that says it's processing. You can press F1 if you don't want to bother with that message. And here up on the screen, you can see you get some information about the recording you just made. So I'm going to go into the menu now, and all your previous recordings show up in the Media Studio. So when you enter the Media Studio, you see what we just made. Now, if you press F3, you go into editing mode, or you can go into view mode for playback. Please note though, if you put previously made recordings onto a stick and hope to use the HDR-1 as a media player, it doesn't function that way. It has to be recorded with the HDR-1 to be played back on it, and it's a one-way trip. So if you try to bring the recording onto there, it will not function as a media player. So you can see now in editing mode here, we have the ability to change the file name, but typically you probably do that on your computer, and the option to edit recordings. So it'll tell you how to edit. It gives you a little visual tutorial, and it's a matter of marking scenes and then deleting them. So you can see here we have a 44-second recording. Say I want to cut the first 5 seconds off, I put in a mark. And then say I want to cut the last 5 seconds off, I'm going to go to here and then mark the scene. So here we have the 2 marks. This you can advance by hour and minute as well. And then from there, I want to switch to segment mode by pressing F1. So when I press F1, you can see the segments are highlighted, and pressing enter will turn them off. And go back to segment mode here. And I want to get this first segment as well. So you can see that now that those 2 are no longer this translucent white, that they've been cut off from this new recording that we made. And you can see in the menu options, F3 is export. So I'm going to press that. It's going to ask you to confirm, and you press OK. And it's not actually going to destruct the original recording. It's actually going to make a copy of it. So you're going to want to make sure that you have enough drive space left to make this edited copy of the recording. And then what you'll see from the Media Studio that once I close this screen here, you're going to see 2 recordings pop up. So I have the edited version here that's highlighted, and the original, which is 10 seconds longer. The convenient thing about this is you can edit a recording, just trim the head and tail off your program, and not have to worry about importing it into an NLE like Adobe Premiere, having to edit it and then export it. So this might save some time on your workflow if every week or every day, depending on whatever your program is, you're finding yourself having to spend an hour or 2 with Adobe trying to trim the head and tail and reprint it.
All right, well that's great. That's a great feature of the recorder. Did we go over all the USB media sticks that we recommended?
We didn't.
Not yet.
I was saving the best for the final third of this live video.
All right.
So,
all right.
yeah, so when purchasing a USB thumb drive, if you want to add additional drives, you will want to look for one that has a high or fast sequential write speed. Because a lot of drives are optimized for random write speeds. So you're copying movies, songs, documents, whatnot to the drive, and you're not as concerned with the consistent write speed that recording video requires. So in that situation, you would want to look for that metric. The problem is on the marketing and the packaging for USB thumb drives, a lot of them don't have that information printed on the package, or they pick the highest number that the device is capable of, and they put that on the package, and it can be misleading. So we do have a compatibility table on our support site that lists a number of USB sticks, as well as some SD cards. So if you have SD cards for, say, your digital camera, they may be compatible with the HDR-1 as long as you're using a compatible SD card reader. And another thing to look out for if you are going to go with the card reader route is to check the orientation of it, because sometimes the SD card might be pointing straight up or it might be pointing straight down depending on how the adapter was manufactured. And I only say that's an issue if this is on a tabletop, the SD card might not have enough clearance. And we also have a rack kit that we'll get into in a moment, but there's another metric that you want to look out for when purchasing a USB stick.
And that's basically MLC type media is what you're going to be looking for. So this USB stick is actually an MLC based stick, but obviously it's a Datavideo branded one, so you're probably not going to find too many of those out in the marketplace. But MLC type media, I don't want to bore you with all the details of how it actually operates, but basically what it is it's geared specifically for this type of writing, real-time record writing for these type of recorders. You don't want to use like a generic USB that you might get as a giveaway item, or just some random one that you have laying around, because they just may not be up to the speed requirements that are necessary for this type of real-time recorder. So that's one of the things you want to do. So when you do your search terms, let's say you're going to buy on Amazon, you can go ahead and type in MLC based or MLC USB media stick, and you'll get a number of options that come up. Also, we do have that compatibility chart that Justin had mentioned, and I can show it to you real quick here. We have it right on our support site. We constantly update it, so you're going to find that sometimes stuff will get a little out of date, some stuff we'll add to it periodically. So always check back. We're constantly editing the document and testing new media so that we make sure that we always have a listing for you to kind of look out for, just in case you're looking for a specific media, either to tell you, for yourself or for your client or whoever you're helping, so that they know exactly what type of media they can utilize. So with that being said, I think, Justin, we were going to, let's see what our next thing is.
Yeah, we have some common questions that we wanted to go over. Question is, can we use a USB drive instead of a USB stick? The answer is yes in some cases, but you don't want a bus-powered drive. You want a hard drive with its own power supply, like a desktop external hard drive. We don't have any current models on our test list. Most of the ones up there are discontinued for the desktop drives. But generally with the USB stick, 64 gigabyte or 128 gigabyte, you'll have hours and hours and hours of recording time. And estimates for recording time are on our frequently asked questions on our support site that I probably should have looked at and had those numbers for you. But yeah, so for USB stick, 128 gigabytes is the max that we recommend. 256 might work, but given the investment, you might want to check the return policy on the stick to make sure that if the test fails that you're able to return it.
Which that kind of brings up another question. You don't want to keep, as Justin mentioned earlier, you don't want to keep tons and tons of files on your USB stick that you're using for your primary recording. You always want to take the approach that you want to be safe, so that if you do get a memory stick corruption at a certain point, you don't have all your media on there. So from time to time, it is very important to back up. So that's what we do recommend doing that. So 64 gig media stick for most people, it should be plenty of space. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's the other thing too, is that if you have, say, a lot of volunteers in your organization, someone might take it that it's okay to format the stick before a recording, and you don't want to lose any prior recordings. So, it helps to have a consistent file-based workflow to make sure that you never lose a program recording. And another question is there a rack mount kit available for the recorder? Stephen, I have a gift for you.
What's that gift?
Stephen loves to show off products, as you saw earlier with the HDR-1, so I'm going to give him the RMK1.
RMK1. Our box is not real pretty, but basically what this is, which it's always fun to unbox stuff, isn't it? So it's basically just a simple rack here that you can attach to the side of the unit. Either side, I don't think it matters, it just depends on which way you want to mount it. So that kind of is a rough example of how it would go in your rack. So you can put the unit in a 19-inch equipment rack. There's no problem with that whatsoever. And also it's a 1U height, so it's perfect for that. You might have to undo the feet on the bottom, but they're just simple rubber feet that can come off. But that's actually our nice little rack mount kit that we have for this recorder. And we'll get rid of the packaging. All that here.
Oh, and this just in, I did look at our frequently asked questions regarding maximum record length. This has come up before. Regardless of the drive size, the longest possible recording time is 14 hours, after which the device will stop recording, and you will receive a message. With a 32 gigabyte drive, you could typically record between 3 and 4.5 hours in HD, depending on the resolution and bitrate option that you chose. In that menu, you had the optimal and the middle quality, and then the max length. And with standard def sources on HDMI, you can do between 5.5 to 9 hours. On page 47 of the manual, there is a detailed chart that can give you some more information based on those record time estimates.
All right, and then we have some questions, I believe, on, let's see, I think they're on Facebook. We've got one they're asking, Diego is asking, hello, I'd like to know if you can edit one captured video with another 2 videos previously stored in the recorder to make one new file. I don't think you can combine videos, clips. I think he's asking if you can take 2 independent recordings and put them together. No, I think it's...
Despite the features in the editing mode, it's simply limited to removing segments. Though what you technically can do along those lines is, if you had a break in the middle of your program and you wanted to edit that out, you can do that, and then it will bring it all into one clip. So say I want to trim the beginning, the end, and part of the middle, I can do that with the editing mode in the Media Studio.
All right, and let's see if there's any other...
I'm not seeing any questions on
that's the only one that I'm seeing currently.
I'm not seeing any.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm checking on my feed.
Steven's handling the questions this week.
It's fine. So let's see if there was anything else that we can kind of go over with you. We went over, just to kind of summarize, we went over the media type, we went over the recorder, we went over some of the menu functions. And again, so I mean, if you have further questions, you can always email us directly to support@datavideo.com. If you actually have the recorder, we'd be glad to assist you. And we wanted to reiterate that all of this was done on Datavideo products, our live stream, which is nice. And if you have comments, questions, even if once our stream ends, you definitely can submit those, and we'll be monitoring those so that we can answer your questions. We'd appreciate it if you can give us a like on Facebook and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And there it is again, our tech corner at datavideo.com. And remember to
this is new.
Tech yourself
before you wreck yourself. I was a little late coming in.
Yeah, that's okay.
But whoever made this did an amazing job.
Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Forgot about that.